appreciate everybody's patience in getting this started this morning. Let's go ahead and jump into it. I've got a number of items on consent that we'll look at the consent calendar, but we can actually jump, before we even go on to the consent calendar, I'm going to go ahead and take items 3, 4, 5, and 6 together as one item. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so what we'll do is go ahead, let's ask the departments to come up, including any commissioners that are here as well that wish to speak on 3, 4, and 5, and 6 before we go into public comment. I will also remind everybody here that this is a bit of an echo chamber in here. It's hard to hear, so if you can silence your cell phones and not speak out during the meeting as well. If you do, we'll ask you to step outside and or leave the meeting and or forfeit your time. So with that, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Thanks for being here. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Let's do an overview. Clearly, we've had a lot of discussion on body-worn cameras. We've also had a number of different reports and analysis, and that's what I'm most interested in, is not where, well, give us an overview of how do we get here today, and we'll do a bit of a dive. I don't know how deep yet, but let's start with that.
And sir, do you mind if
Maggie,
I allow
if you
the
put just
commissioner?
your
Sorry,
name
Maggie
for the-
Goodrich, CIO for LAPD. Would you mind if I allow the commissioners to make some opening statements so they can head back across the street for police commission?
We would be honored.
Fantastic. I'll defer to you first since this was...
Okay. Morning, everybody. I thought that the...
And Steve, for the record.
Steve Soberoff, Police Commissioner.
Thanks.
I thought that the council comments and the comments that came out of public safety were good. I could see where they came from. And I thought that the department and Maggie and this new cost-benefit analysis really responded to the specific questions thoroughly and accurately and fairly. In fact, I told Maggie today, I said, you know, I thought the responses were conservative because I exaggerate and you didn't in your responses. So I'm proud of that. I look forward to the on-body cameras because of a number of reasons, but one of which is when we do go into closed session and we do look at OISs, sometimes we have some with on-body cameras and sometimes we don't. And it is an absolute difference, night and day difference. It's a critical piece of information that is helpful to us in making our determinations. So I want to thank you. Thank you for putting us up on the agenda. We've got our own this morning, but our president, Matt Johnson.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Matthew Johnson, President of the Police Commission. A lot has been said and a lot has been discussed over many, many months regarding body cameras. I think it bears repeating that I don't view this as a nice to have. I view this as an essential part of policing in today's day and age and as we move into the future. I think when you look at the level of transparency and accountability it brings, it is absolutely essential for the public trust that we have these cameras. When you look at the number of complaints that we have when officers have cameras versus when they don't, it shows you that it is a de-escalating tool, an invaluable de-escalating tool. I expect that we're going to have far fewer complaints, and I expect that when we do have complaints, our ability to adjudicate them as opposed to them being undetermined result will be far greater. I think they're going to be a huge de-escalating factor in use of force. I think they're really going to have an impact on when force is used. And as Commissioner Sobroff said, it is a night and day difference for us when we have to adjudicate these use of force cases when we have video versus when we don't.
Yeah.
And I view that as essential. This process that has gotten us to where we are today, I think, is very valuable. I think we do have to look at the process. I think we do have to look at the cost, and I do think we have to look at the personnel. And I can assure you that the Commission is highly focused on that. We want to make sure that the implementation of these cameras is done in the most efficient way possible, that when we're using our resources, whether it's financial or personnel, we're doing it in the smartest way possible, that where we can use civilians, we will, where we can avoid duplication, we will, and where we can reduce costs, we will. And this is not going to be a one-time thing. There's going to be a lot of lessons that we're going to be learning. The department will be looking at it independently. The Commission will be looking at it independently, and we're all going to be highly focused on making sure we do this in the smartest way possible.
Can I add one? I want to add one comment. We were very validated by the Center for the Study of Los Angeles survey done by Fernando Guerra at LMU, where it showed that over 90% of the public thinks that these cameras are good ideas, and then to make police more accountable, to decrease use of force, etc. The numbers were just off the charts in the 90s. And it's nice to be it's nice to be validated. And sometimes you can do the right thing the wrong way, but in this case, I want to congratulate well, not yet, but hopefully tomorrow, congratulate Maggie and Dan, because I think they did the right thing the right way, and it was hard, because if I'm on your speed dial, it was hard. Thanks.
Yes. No, thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
And let me, I know you're taking off. Let me thank you. You probably won't hear my remarks then, so let me just jump in real quick. And particularly, and Matt, thanks, but Steve, when we first met on this was the day before you took the helm as president of the commission at that point. And I'll never forget the conversation. And you asked me.
You were against it. I wasn't going to bring it up.
Well, you asked me my top 3 priorities for the department, and I said on body cameras, on body cameras, on body cameras. Those are my top 3 priorities. And you said, "Oh, that sounds great. What is that?" And that's where the discussion just leaped. And then the next day, you're giving your opening remarks as the incoming president of the commission, and stood up and said, "My first priority is to put a body camera on every police officer in this department." It was far before most agencies were even considering it, and far before many of the incidents that were happening in this nation had occurred, where people were looking at this technology. I view this as equivalent and as important as the invention of the police radio. And it's a game changer for the public, the department, and the personnel, and the city. And so in looking at all of that, as you all know, I've been a passionate proponent, but also wanting to make sure we did it correctly, and eyes wide open, in full transparency, and also looking at the cost. That was a big element to it. And I can't thank you enough for slowing the train down to actually look at cost-benefit analysis, not one but 2 now that have actually been done, to really point out the true benefits, not only as a de-escalator, as a tool for the department and for the general public, but also to the taxpayers. I mean, all in all, it's great all around, for just a vast plethora of number of reasons, actually. So I want to thank you, because you've continued not only on that, but then, Steve, you've gone out there to pilot this and raise the money privately through foundations, while not, and taking a back step to not micromanage the process of the department or the technology, and just said, I don't care where we end up, as long as we end up somewhere. And really took the reins on that, and true leadership. And I think we're all grateful. I mean, if you could put...
I know two of the three people that were most supportive of springing from the beta test into the full. One is you, one is the mayor. I want to give him credit for that.
Absolutely.
And the third one, I don't know, but I think some people, it was the president, because he saw the benefit of these in wake of what happened in Ferguson.
Right. Sure.
And he started creating financial incentives and really raising the level. And so, Mr. Obama, sir, thank you.
Yes. So I want to take the time to thank you. And then,
Thanks, Matt.
Matt, as you took over, you just continued down carried that mantle, and picked up the baton and ran with it. And so it's been a team effort. And I'll thank Maggie after her report. Dan. Maybe after tomorrow. So get through this. But I know you guys are taking off, so I wanted to thank you. So
thank you. And thank you for your leadership on
Appreciate
this.
it.
I second the appreciation to Mr. Sobroff in saying this is the number one priority of the police commission, and I was happy to come into the position and support it 100%. It's absolutely the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sir.
Maggie, before you get started, also for those of you who are in the room, as a reminder, we don't allow any signs, posters, exhibits, and those include distractions of dolls, etc. So, Mr. Herman, if you don't put it away, I'll ask you to leave. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you don't put it away, now you're disrupting the meeting. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know we took a number of items here together, so maybe I'll just give a quick rundown of what's before you and try to give a brief overview, and then we can dive into any particular topic that you wish. So what's before you today is the approval of the contract with TASER for the purchase of the body cameras that will bring us to a total of 7,000 on top of the 860 that were donated originally by the Police Foundation. That contract includes a number of things. So it's a 5-year agreement. It's a hosted solution, which means we do not need city IT staff to support servers and storage and the like, which is a good thing given our limited civilian staffing. The contract also includes unlimited storage for all of the video. It includes additional storage for other types of digital media, so other recordings that may not come from body cameras but maybe crime scene photos and things like that. We'll also have storage for that. The contract includes 2 technology upgrades over the life of the contract. So at year 2.5 and year 5, we'll receive a full 7,000 replacement cameras so that we can keep up with the technology as it advances, and we're seeing it advance very quickly. The other thing it includes is 4,400 TASER conductive electrical weapon devices. So that will put the actual TASER less than lethal weapons in the hands of many more patrol officers than have them today, which is also a great thing. The other thing that it includes, and sir, directly in response to your motion, Councilman Englander, is it does include the most favored nations clause, so that if any other agency receives more favorable pricing than we've been able to negotiate, we will also receive that pricing. So far, we haven't found an agency that's negotiated better pricing than us, but if it happens, we'll be entitled to that. And it also includes a termination for convenience clause, and that allows us to terminate that 5-year agreement at any time over the 5 years with 30 days written notice for any reason. So if we find a better solution or we decide we want to do something different with the technology, at any point over the 5 years, we have the right to terminate the contract and go in a different direction. So we're not necessarily locked in here. The good news is, though, that the pricing's locked in with the significant discounts that we were able to negotiate. So the price discounts that we've been able to negotiate here include 75% off of the list price of the cameras, the docking stations that are used to dock the cameras and upload the video. We're receiving those at no cost, which is a savings of about $1.5 million to the city, because those are usually about $1,500 a piece, actually. And we've also negotiated about 25% off of just that storage, maintenance, licensing fees that are recurring over the years. The other things that are included in the budget are funding for the infrastructure work to install those docking stations, and also the connectivity and for the mobile devices. So each camera comes with a mobile phone. The great thing about this project is not only are we deploying body cameras, but we're deploying mobile devices with mobile field reporting. So very soon we'll be able to come back and show you the first mobile app that we've developed, which is a mobile stops app that will collect the stops data on the ethnicity and gender of each individual stopped and with the details of what occurred during that stop. Shortly after that, we'll come back and be able to demo for you an electronic FI card. So no longer FI, field investigation card, so that no longer will officers have to carry a pencil and a stack of cards with them when they fill out their field interview contact cards. So that, in addition to the cameras, that's a really exciting area of technology, in that we're finally getting mobile devices into the hands of officers and being able to develop an entire app store dedicated to the LAPD and law enforcement. The other thing that's in addition to the contract since we were before you the last time is one of the advancements we've seen in the body camera technology over the last several months is the ability to have an auto activation on the camera. So one of the concerns early on was that officers have to activate this camera themselves, where with in-car video, for example, when they trigger the light bar, the camera will come on automatically. So since then, auto activation has been made available for body cameras as well, and so TASER has agreed to include the auto activation equipment that's required to be installed in each car at no cost. They're adding that to the agreement as well, so that we'll also be able to auto activate the cameras when the light bar goes on. So that's a great improvement.
Thank you.
Directly in response to, the other thing that's on the agenda today is the acceptance of the grant funds. So we've received $1 million from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the granting arm of DOJ, to go toward the cameras. So that's before you as well. And then, sir, your motion that requested that we do an updated market analysis. A report is attached that responds directly to that.
Right.
We issued a vendor questionnaire. Dan, if you want to speak to how many responses we received to that.
Sure. Dan Gomez, LAPD. So we sent the questionnaire through the LA Bavin system through the city, so that went out to 512 different vendors. In addition to that, we looked at the market and sent it out to an additional 36 vendors that we knew were in the body camera market. We received 18 responses back, and in the summary of the report, we kind of listed what their advances were. Some of them have done some small improvements since our last market analysis, which was October of 2015. And then there are a few new cameras coming out in the market, but many of them are not market ready yet. They're still either about to be released or just haven't been released yet, but we took those as well and considered them as part of the analysis that you have before you.
The updated market analysis found a few new things in the technology over the last 6 months since we did that last analysis last October. So one being that there are some vendors who are moving to a cloud storage solution where previously there were many on-premise solutions, so that was an advancement that we saw in the technology. The other is the auto activation technology that I already discussed. And then lastly, there are some vendors who are producing software that can be applied to a cell phone so that the cell phone itself becomes the body camera. So that's a new advancement in the technology as well. That wasn't particularly practical for us in that because we're developing those mobile field apps, we want officers to be able to use that phone to actually be entering information on an FI card and things like that. So we don't also want them to have to be worried about pointing a camera from the phone. But that was one of the advances we found. The other thing that we did in response to the motion was take a look at RFPs across the country where they asked for a minimum of 1,000 cameras. And so there's a table on page 8 of the report that lists a number of cities that released RFPs and selected TASER for their camera solution. We did find one in Miami that selected another vendor. However, it was a solution that didn't meet our minimum specifications, and it was therefore not included here. And then lastly, your motion asks for cost-benefit analysis. And so with that, we have the good fortune also of having received a $2 million grant from the National Institute of Justice, which is the research arm of DOJ. And with that $2 million, the requirement by NIJ is that we have a third-party researcher who does the full evaluation of the body camera project and looks at the impact of the cameras on the department, on officers, and the community. And so that third-party researcher is Dr. Craig Uchida, who is here with us today. Since we have the good fortune of partnering with Dr. Uchida on that that study under the grant, I asked if he would please do the cost-benefit analysis rather than you relying on my math. So I asked Dr. Uchida if he would please be here today. There's a cost-benefit analysis attached as an addendum to the report, and then also I submitted to the clerk this morning an addendum that Dr. Uchida just put together. So you should have a sheet in front of you that's double-sided that's an addendum as well.
Right, thank you very much.
With that, maybe we can let Dr. Uchida speak.
That'd be great. And I think before we jump into the cost-benefit analysis, I want to thank you for addressing all of those items. There were 5 in the last motion that were very far-reaching in terms of research and report writing and analysis, and as well as the 2 clauses critically important for termination, as well as most favored nation. So really appreciate that that you did those. But quite frankly, looking at the cost-benefit analysis, the most conservative numbers were surprising in terms of the opportunity from just a savings, forget, yet alone. If there were no savings, it would make sense to move forward without question. If there were, and the most conservative numbers, which you're going to walk us through, were staggering. And then looking at that as well, saying, could these be real? So you did the analysis to what's happening in Mesa, what's happening in Rialto, what's happening in Phoenix and other areas. So we have data. What's happened in already divisions we've deployed these on, and seeing and capturing use of force from civilian complaints, lawsuits, time, putting officers back in the street. So walk us through all of that. But even again, in the most conservative numbers, these are phenomenal. So this is very, very helpful. I appreciate it. And this should be counter to what everybody has sticker shock on, is the cost. Because it can finally put to rest concern over spending money on technology. If it had no other benefit, this actually saves money. And I think that's one of the least important things in this entire equation, but very important to many. And this does so much. So thank you for that.
Good morning. I'm Craig Uchida. I'm the president of Justice and Security Strategies. We're a consulting group that does evaluations of police across the country. We've also worked here on the fire department and have done some work with them with respect to calls for service. Part of what we're doing now is evaluating the use of body-worn cameras, and we're looking at a broad array of information there. We've also looked at what's been going on across the country in terms of research, and that's what's cited here as well. These are small departments that have been researched so far, except for Phoenix. Rialto, small. Mesa, small. Phoenix, small. And that was one of the reasons why I chose to take a very conservative route in terms of the cost benefits of body-worn cameras.
How many officers in Phoenix?
In Phoenix, there's 2,000. But only, I think, about 150 have used them, and only 150 have been tested and evaluated using them. And so, right now we're looking at 1,000 officers here in the department, in the LAPD, and assessing what they're doing and how they're using the cameras, as well as measuring uses of force, civilian complaints, and other types of things. I think it's also important to note that we're doing observations of officers. So we've observed them before they use the cameras and after they use the cameras, because we want to know if their behavior changes as a result of the cameras themselves. We're also conducting surveys of officers, get their perceptions about the cameras, and we're doing that 3 times. So we're getting a lot of information about the cameras themselves from the officers, and we're also going to be doing focus groups with community groups to gain their perceptions of these cameras too. So having said that, what we did was we looked at what these other departments have done in terms of reductions of uses of force and civilian complaints. And in Rialto, they said that 59% of, they saw a reduction of uses of force in 59% of the time. They also saw a reduction in civilian complaints, 87%. Mesa saw a reduction of 75% in uses of force and 40% in civilian complaints. Phoenix saw a reduction of complaints 23%. But they didn't look at uses of force. So given those pieces of information, I surmise that, okay, if 10% of uses of force were reduced by the LAPD officers, we would save a certain amount of money based on 10% and based on the costs of what officers do and what goes on with an officer-involved shooting or use of force, non-categorical or categorical. And I was very conservative in saying that if 10% of uses of force were reduced over a 1-year period, that would be about 190 uses of force annually. Because what we've done too is we've looked at the numbers of uses of force from 2000 to 2014. On average, there are about 1,900 each year. So there are about 28,000 over this 15-year period. And in looking at that, we also said, okay, how long does it take to do an investigation of a use of force? And very conservatively, again, we said 40 hours, which is very low, I might add. Those are for non-categoricals and categoricals. Non-cats are ones where that involved a slight touch, grabbing. The categoricals, as you know, involve officer-involved shootings and other more serious types of events that do take quite a bit more time. So in putting this together, we suggested that 40 hours of investigations would take place and that officers that conduct the investigations, they have an hourly rate of about $83 per hour fully loaded. So that means that we took their salaries, we took their fringe benefit packages, and came up with a figure of $83 per hour for detective and detective sergeant, or supervisors rather, and looked at that as well. So, and given those types of figures, we, for instance, found with uses of force, and I would refer, frankly, to the addendum that I did because it's a lot easier to look at here. If there's a 10% reduction of uses of force, that's 190 of them. That's 40 times 40 hours times $83 an hour. We would see a savings in that year of about $630,800, which equates to about 3.65 officers. And so I also then looked at a 25% reduction, a 30% reduction, and a 50% reduction, just to see what those numbers would look like. And again, what I say in the addendum is that if there's a range of 10 to 50% reductions in uses of force, the department achieves an annual savings from $630,000 to about $3.15 million, and that ranges from 3 to 18 officers. And I did a similar calculation for civilian complaints. that annually there are about 2,200 civilian complaints against LAPD officers. And again, the same kind of analyses. And so with 10% reduction, that means 220 less complaints. It means a savings of about $730,000 a year, or about 4 officers back on the street. And again, the same kind of analyses of 25, 30, and 50%. And we could see a savings of $730,000 to about $3.65 million, which again leads to about 4 to 21 officers back on the street. I also looked at lawsuits to see what was going on with lawsuits. And as you know, the last couple of lawsuits have been pretty high, about $8 million and about $15 million in the most recent ones. I took another conservative approach and looked at what's the cost of just defending officers with these lawsuits. And we surmised that about $100,000 to $200,000 it costs per lawsuit per officer. And again, that's a ballpark, a low ball figure. And the other parts about lawsuits also are that obviously they're difficult to determine what's going on with those lawsuits. So there could be lawsuits where we have evidence, we have a camera, there's a complaint, there's an issue, the civilian or whomever determines that they've been wronged and that there's a civil rights lawsuit against the department and the officer. In any kind of case, it could be just a he said, she said. It could be something more violent. It could be anything. And so that's why I decided that trying to predetermine anything like that would be really difficult. And so the easiest way and simplest way was to look just at the defense, initial defense of a lawsuit by the city attorney's office and what it takes for the department to engage in as well. The other underlying part of this is that the notion here of having the body-worn cameras is that some frivolous lawsuits would be avoided, that they would have evidence, they would have the ability to show the footage and be able to say, okay, there's nothing here. The adjudication would be, dismissed and or not even brought forward. In other cases, there may be situations where there is indeed wrongful doing by the officer, and that we have that on video and we have the footage of that. It may be then in the best interest of the city to settle sooner. And so you have these different types of scenarios that could happen. And so again, it's hard to determine. But in any given year, I suggested that if 25 cases are not litigated in a given year, then anywhere from $2.5 to $5 million would be saved just based on the defense costs alone. I might add too that we also looked at the number of lawsuits that have occurred over the last 3 years. In 2014, there were 93. In 2015, there were 135. This year so far, there's about 40, and we're projecting about 160. And so we know that there are costs that are being incurred now, and we suggest too then that if others in the department beyond the 1,000 now have those cameras, then some of these cases could be alleviated. So that's basically what I've looked at. I've also suggested that there are additional benefits to the cameras. They include reductions in injuries to officers and to citizens, potential reductions in overtime, potentially less stress and greater job satisfaction among officers, and there could be enhanced positive public opinions. In the addendum, I've also laid out how we plan to measure some of these and how we intend to determine whether these things can and will happen. at least in terms of the research. We're looking right now at officer behavior. We're measuring officer-involved shootings, officer uses of force, et cetera. Right now, we've got a sample of officers that we will be able to look at and compare to other officers who are not using cameras and determine whether their incidents have led to fewer or more injuries of themselves and citizens and other types of things as well.
Great. Thank you very much. And if I were to extrapolate some of the numbers, and you use the most conservative numbers, on the lowest end of 10% of across the board. But if you actually, and now we can qualify and quantify on a comparative analysis from other and similar departments and agencies, not that there's any similar department to LAPD, but we'll let them think they are. But in terms of just numbers and from that perspective, in looking at even what I would consider conservative, not just at the lowest end of it. One second here. Not just on the lowest end, but extrapolating the numbers comparatively.
I see.
So on a comparative,
yeah.
If you took, in looking at, for example, use of force on the cost-benefit analysis at 50%, simply because looking at Rialto and Mesa and other agencies and departments, they're at 59%, at 75%. Even if we took a lowest number at 50%, you're looking at roughly $3 million or 18 officers. On civilian complaints, if you took that average, and this is again on the lowest end, 87% we saw and 40% and 23%. If we took a 30% on average, you're at 2 million and another nearly 13 officers, 12.7. On assumptions on litigation, you're at right in the middle based on those and the fact that the curve is going up every year dramatically. Even if you took a number of 5 million, you're saved. That's significant, as well as the overall department in the number of cases that are actually filed, not just one. And you took that in the middle, you came up with an assumption of 2.5 million to 10 million, and you called that 5 million. You're at 15 million a year just off that. Does not include city attorney's office and time. It does not include outside counsel and specialists and experts and investigative work. It does not include all of the costs associated with the litigation. It does not include, by the way, the attorney's fees on many of these as well. Does not include the changes in mandates out of the precedent set. It does not. So this, what you've done is modeled the most conservative estimate, and your numbers are roughly a minimum of 45 officers back in the street on top of another 15 million net savings to the taxpayers by deploying one piece of technology, not to mention all the other benefits. So I just wanted to point that out. That's what I've extrapolated from your report, which is why I wanted to see these numbers. And I really appreciate that you put these in scale and scope, because that was important, as well as the most conservative to the most probably realistic. And I'll say those are the two ranges, conservative to realistic. So with that, I'd like to hear from the CAO's office as well. If you got anything to add, Tyler.
Don't have anything to add at this point, just because we don't have enough data at this point in the city.
Right.
But we have this grant, which is going to help us collect more data.
So one of the things that, and I'll be making one of the recommendations, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues in a second to ask questions as well. But one of the recommendations of many of the recommendations I'll be making out of this will be to maintain stats ongoing of what we came up with in the cost-benefit analysis and do a tracking and come back and report back annually to this committee as well as Budget and Finance and where we're at with maintaining the stats on what came out of the cost-benefit analysis. Just sort of see where we're at so we can continue to quantify this as well. This also doesn't mention the savings, by the way, in deploying new technology with the cell phones, with electronic IDs, with all that type of electronic reporting, all the benefits of that, all the mistakes that are typically made, not made anymore because of all kinds of either error in the field or handwriting or bad lighting or all the situations officers or lost paperwork or, all the things that go into that. I mean, all the other benefits that will come with deploying mobile technology. Doesn't even speak to that. So, great, thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it over to my colleagues as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your leadership on this. I do want to recognize you, Mitch, for leading this effort along with Commissioner Sobroff, who I know had to leave to get to the Police Commission, and of course our mayor, who's looking at re-upping our commitment for a more transparent, open, and honest police department. Clearly, I have no questions about the importance of the value of body-worn video, and I'm completely supportive of deploying this technology department-wide. In fact, in my 20 years of service with the Los Angeles Police Department, I've seen early on in my career its dark days. And I've been a part of a number of pilot programs, such as using tape recorders. And when I worked West Traffic, it got me out of a complaint. And work in South Bureau with the in-car video, moving forward to today, where we can potentially approve the deployment of body-worn cameras. I do recall back in 2000 when the council and the mayor approved entering a consent decree. And we entered that consent decree because we had challenges with officers who were breaking the law. And to give us an opportunity now to highlight the great work of the officers that I've worked with over the course of the last 20 years that would love for the public to see and able to see the professionalism and courtesy that they employ each and every day gives us this opportunity. In a time where there's so much distrust in this country with the relationships between the police department and the community, I don't see that distrust here in the city of Los Angeles. We've come a long way, specifically in my days with the police department, and also, I mean, you go to Watts today, where we recall 2 riots, where today now our relationship between the community and the police department is better than ever. The questions for me are the following. Did the department follow a fair, transparent, and legal procurement process? Are we getting a good deal? And is the department maximizing the use of civilians to ensure sworn officers are out in the streets and not behind a desk?
Thank you, sir. So I'll address each of those here. So in terms of the procurement process, yes, we did follow the city charter and administrative code. That there is a section in the Charter and Administrative Code that allows, in particular for technology and a few other types of procurements in the city, that an agency can utilize a bid or a contract that's been put together by another jurisdiction. So in this instance, we're proposing that we utilize a Kern County bid for the body cameras. Now, the city charter and the ad code actually allow us to utilize another jurisdiction's contract even when it wasn't competitively bid. So
and that's called a piggyback.
That's referred to generally as a piggyback, correct. In this instance, even though technically we could have used maybe another agency's contract where they've did a sole source to TASER, we chose not to do that and instead to look at competitive bids in the area. And we decided to utilize the Kern County agreement, primarily because they're local. As you'll see in the report, there are a number of cities that have selected TASER: Baltimore, Charlotte, Cleveland, Dallas, San Antonio, San Francisco. There are a number of large agencies that have all released an RFP and selected TASER. We could certainly use any of those. But the bottom line is we would just be using the procurement, just as we're doing with the Kern County agreement. We would still come to you with the same contract that's before you today, and that's because rather than utilizing the contract that any of those agencies entered into, we used the bid and then negotiated our own contract, because the volume at which we're buying, we were able to negotiate much larger discounts than any other city in the country. And so It absolutely was, by the book procurement. It was reviewed by the city attorney. The contract could not be before you today if it was not approved by the city attorney. And they also looked at the bid that was issued by Kern County to verify that, in fact, we could use it. In terms of the deal we're getting, that's why we negotiated that separate contract rather than using Kern County or any of these other cities I mentioned, rather than using their contract. The deal that we're getting, as I mentioned previously, across the country, most agencies are paying about $3.99 for the cameras. We're paying $99. Most of the agencies are paying $99 a month for that unlimited storage and licensing. We're paying $74 a month. Most of those agencies are paying $1,500 per docking station. And keep in mind, for a department our size, we have up to 50 docking stations on a wall in any given single police station. So that's saving us about $1.5 million. So certainly we're getting a great deal. And then keep in mind also we are getting additional storage at no extra cost for some other digital media. And we're also getting that technology upgrade twice over the life of this contract. So we're really getting 7,000 cameras 3 times over the life of this contract, right, to keep up with that technology and keep up with the improvements. And then since the contract was originally negotiated, now we're getting one of those auto activation devices for each and every of our patrol cars. So we really are getting a great deal. In terms of the use of civilians, I will say we heard your comments and your feedback the last time we were here and talked about staffing and resources. We took it to heart and we went back to figure out how we could utilize civilians as much as possible in regard to supporting the body camera project. And so in that regard, there still will be places where we need to use sworn. For example, in the investigation of an officer-involved shooting, those Force Investigation Division supervisors and investigators are sworn. But there are places where we can use civilians. And in particular, that is within the Inspector General for the reviews that they do, within Audit Division for the audits that they do, and in particular here in the 16-17 budget, there are actually 9 civilian positions that were authorized to just do review of video, basically random inspections. So watching video to ensure officers are just following policy, ensuring the camera is activated when it's supposed to be and deactivated when it's supposed to be. And we thought for that effort, that could be a civilian function. There will typically be a supervisor somewhere in that chain of command that will review the video if, say, the civilian identifies what they believe to be a problem. We would ask a sworn supervisor to take a look at that. But that frontline review that was going to be the bulk of that resource need will now be done by civilians. We sat with the CAO and worked out a staffing plan over the next 3 years. If you'll recall, when we were here in November, we were talking about 120 bodies.
Right.
We've pared that down significantly. So in this fiscal year, like I said, it's 9 civilians and then 6 existing sworn that are assigned to the project. The plan is that over the next 3 fiscal years, we would cap out at a total of 36 individuals who are
So
assigned.
from 120 to 36 individuals, most of them civilian, my understanding?
Correct.
So why didn't you come to us with the initial proposal with 36 bodies?
So the original 120 was not a request for 120 bodies, right? It was a mention in the CAO report of some discussions that we had and some initial budget, planning efforts that were underway. But it was not a request for 120 bodies in any way. The thought was that certainly over the life of this project, there probably are 120 bodies that are going to come into contact with this video, right? Ultimately, if you count in all the internal affairs investigators and Force Investigation Division and others, pursuits, collisions, you name it, there probably are 120 individuals in the department that are going to come across video in some way, especially now that we're expanding, in-car video. We just wrapped up in West Bureau and we're headed to the Valley next, and that will finish the department. So there will be a number of individuals that interface with the video on a regular basis. But that was not a request for staffing at that time. The request for staffing was done solely through the budget process, and that's where we came to the 9 new civilians for this coming fiscal year.
Got it. I do also want to thank you for bringing in Mr. Uchida and JSS. I looking at these costs, significant costs, I feel, moving forward on this project. and getting on body cameras, we're going to see significant cost savings on lawsuits and personnel costs. If you can, Maggie, take me back rather to 2010, when the report states that the department began testing the body-worn video technology 2010, and after 3 years of researching available technology, you narrowed down the options to 2 vendors that could meet the department's large-scale needs. Now, wasn't this a de facto RFQ process to see who qualified to meet the department needs?
Yes, effectively, that's what it was. So Sergeant Gomez, who leads the tactical technology section for my bureau, looks at all new and emerging technology and to determine what will benefit the field. And his section is essentially always thinking about 5 years out. In 2010, they were looking at body cameras and actually visited a couple of body camera vendors when their body cameras were essentially paperweights at the time. They were an idea. Fast forward to about 2013, when some body camera vendors really started producing something that we thought we could take a look at. That's when we did a real full analysis of the market, looked at what was out there, narrowed it down to the top 2. And while it wasn't a formal RFP posted on Bavin, because we were geared then at putting basically a specification together and a request for the police foundation. It was a full market analysis, and we've continued to update that every year since then. So we did that field test in 2014. We went back to the International Association of Chiefs of Police conference, where every vendor you can name is on the floor there, and visited all of the body camera vendors. We did it again this past in 2014 and 2015, and then we just did this updated market analysis again, where we received 18 responses. So it's been a very thorough review of technology.
So on the technology piece, and if I can fold in Sergeant Gomez, maybe Doctor of Technology at the LAPD, Sergeant Gomez. Dan, are you concerned about moving forward that we don't...
Excuse me for 1 second. I did say no signs and/or dolls, and you're waving those down the aisle, so we're going to ask you to leave. Thank you very much for being here. We've already warned you. So we've already warned you, and you came in dancing down the aisle, again, disrupting the meeting with signs, waving the signs, as well as your what appears to be a Nazi doll, which is, but you came back in waving it, not just carrying it, but waving it through, dancing down the aisle, disrupting the meeting. So we've already given one warning. Now you're disrupting the meeting. Okay, you can still conduct. Okay, now you're banned from this meeting. Thank you very much for being here.
I lost my train of thought, Mr. England.
Yeah, no, it's very disruptive, and it's maybe you'll come back for our mental health discussion.
He needs it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. You're still disrupting the meeting. Thank you. Still dancing with the dolls. All right, thank you.
Sergeant Gomez, thanks for that, Mitch. Sergeant Gomez, as far as updating technology 5 years from now, I believe, Maggie, you mentioned earlier that we have systems in place that will update the technology over the course of, 5 or 10 years. You're comfortable with moving forward on something that, so we look forward to, so we don't lose the technology piece and the upgrades or the software improvements. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I am absolutely comfortable with it. I think it actually benefits us because what it does is it immerses us in the technology. So the greatest benefit for the companies, really all companies that work with the Los Angeles Police Department, is that because we're such a large organization, they get the direct feedback from our end users, and our officers are the best in the world. And so they do get that direct feedback. We apply that, and oftentimes the best companies that we work with are always taking that information back and improving their products. So in those technology leaps, we see things that are not only good for the city of Los Angeles, but really across law enforcement in general. So I'm absolutely comfortable with it.
And what are you hearing from the 1,000 cameras that we deployed from my brother and sister officers out in the field? What has been their feedback?
So I think the number one thing that we heard from them initially was twofold. One is that they wanted a different kind of bracketing mechanism than the first one. And so the next generation of cameras, which I'm wearing now, which would be deployed based on this camera or this contract, does have a new magnet system. It's much easier to put on, gives them a few more options in terms of wearing it. So that's, again, a good example of what we did in the beginning pilot to where we are today. And also the button was increased. Again, officers in that moment of stress are just looking for a big button to push, very simple. Yeah. And also in this new design, there's a larger button. The first one was good. The second one is better.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable moving forward now. The department has been responsive to the concerns from this council. I do want to recognize Chief Beck and, of course, the mayor for leading this effort. Los Angeles is such a massive city, and we often have the ability to spur innovation in the marketplace. Once this moves forward, we will be the largest city or largest law enforcement agency to have such deployment. This will ultimately be the largest deployment body-worn video in the country. Instead of selecting, I'm just really pleased of moving forward on this, and I appreciate your leadership, Mr. Chairman, on moving forward. Any way we can to, again, bring more transparency and open and honest law enforcement agency, I'm supportive of moving forward, because as a police officer for many, many years now, hitting my 20th year, I've seen our dark days, and now we're moving forward even more so to be the best, continue to be the world-class law enforcement agency, and one that is open and transparent. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your steady guidance and leadership on this over the years. In my 3 years on the City Council, nearly 3 years, I haven't seen a policy more vetted, more evaluated, more thoroughly researched, more negotiated, and I think that speaks to your abilities and your diligence. And I want to thank Dr. Gomez and you, Maggie, for your briefings to my staff and I over the many months to help me understand this process much better than I otherwise would have. And also to you, Mr. Uchida, for your cost benefits. I think that's a lot for us to consider, and I think it really bolsters the justification for this program. A few questions that I have are just data-wise. With the phone program that has been described in the report, will officers be allowed or able to observe active, up-to-date stay-away orders in the field on their phones? That's sometimes currently there's a disconnect in that, and that's a problem in Hollywood. And so
We have a number of, Dr. Gomez here has a list of dozens, if not more than that, applications that we're looking to develop for the mobile devices. We found a good development partner, and that's exactly the type of application that we're looking at to get the right data at the fingertip of officers when they need it. So
it's instantaneous, and I would suggest really focus on that. Because we can have all the tools in the world, but if the data isn't accessible right when it's most needed, then it's useless. So that's just a particular focus in my district. And are there any additional staffing expenses that have been anticipated or imagined that we haven't fully contemplated?
I don't think so. We've been very thorough in the review and the proposed budget and the budget discussions. I can't think of any.
All right. And there are certain things that we just aren't going to know until it's rolled out, and I understand that as well. As far as the $31 million contract, is there detailed information on what is actually services and what is actually equipment, the percentage of either, or is it all kind of thrown in together? And
it's all kind of together. I mean, there is the $99 cost of the cameras times 6,000, but other than that, it's all sort of one and the same in that it's a hosted solution, right? So we're not buying servers and storage and the like. It's all hosted and supported by the vendor. So bulk of it is the vendor supporting that solution, right? So that city staff does not have to.
Mostly services then. Okay. And in terms of the contract, I can't imagine a better negotiated contract in terms of opt-out, et cetera. If a competitor comes up with a better price, we get to that price as well with the existing contract. After 5 years, is there an option just to renew, or will there be a new procurement process?
So that'll depend on where the state of the technology is really, right? So as we approach that 5-year mark, we'll do that market analysis again, and we'll continue to do it really over the course of the 5 years. If TASER is still the solution we want to be with, then we would see about maybe entering into another 5-year agreement or something like that. If there's something else on the market that's the leader at that point, then we will certainly make that a consideration.
Thank you. And it may be a given, but I would certainly suggest that there are regular reports back to the committee on, as we move the contract forward on how it's working and what's working and what isn't working so well. And I look forward to the ride, because I think it's going to be anything that'll help put more officers on the streets, and I think that's what this will result in. Not to mention the greater transparency piece and adding a measure of safety that we don't currently have. I think that puts it in a really strong position for approval. So thank you for all your work, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
I just have one quick question. I know you'd already discussed the rollout. Which one's the next Valley station that's going to get the cameras? I know Mission in my district was one of the first batches. What's the next one?
Topanga? Topanga.
And after that? When is Foothill or Van Nuys on the list?
So we grouped the stations into basically 3 phases, and the way we grouped them was actually based on feedback from General Services Division when they did the site walks, because the legwork here is actually on the installation of the infrastructure to support those docking stations that have to go on the walls in the stations. So the newer stations are in phase 1, the sort of mid-age stations are in phase 2, and the much older stations are in phase 3, simply because General Services is going to need much more lead time on the older stations to get just the necessary power and cooling and all of that to the location where the docking stations are going to be installed. So in terms of Valley, you've got Topanga and North Hollywood in phase 1. West Valley.
And what year is phase 1?
Valley traffic in phase 2. Phase 1 we will get started on, assuming this contract is approved tomorrow. We will start the planning right away, and I would hope to get started on phase 1 by August.
Can you do this? Can you submit just a timeline on the rollout and
Absolutely.
phases, and then we'll have it all, because I think we're all.
And what I have today is just a printout of the
It's
phases.
preliminary, sure,
So
I'm
I
sure.
can provide this to the clerk
Okay.
today as well.
Great.
So was Mission based on the same premise that they were a newer station? So
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
So it wasn't based on the number of incidences or the fact that
No, it's
For their
it's really a matter of logistically, how can we get the equipment installed? So with the cameras that were donated by the Police Foundation, we actually went to 3 stations that represented the kind of mid-aged and the oldest, specifically for that reason, so we'd understand about how long those installations take, so we could plan out the timeline.
Okay. And the last question I had is, are there any other grant opportunities that we can take advantage of?
We'll continue to monitor the grant opportunities. One of the things actually we just applied for, there was not a grant opportunity for us to apply for funding for additional cameras. The grant that came out this year was for new agencies only. They weren't adding funding to anybody who had already received it. But we did just apply for a grant in partnership with the city attorney and district attorney to study the impact on those offices and specifically on prosecutions as it relates to the use of body-worn video as evidence. So there are some opportunities, and we continue to watch those and apply for them as they come.
That's it, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Chair, if I can. Thank you. And the proposed number of cameras, did that include our reserve corps as well in those numbers? Are we going to ensure that we have adequate number of cameras for our reserves?
It includes
Yes, okay.
anybody who wears a uniform and
Okay.
engages in any sort
Thank
of
you.
enforcement or investigative activity.
Thank you, Maggie.
Okay, and they'll all be assigned.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, with that, seeing no other questions, we've got a number of comment cards. If you guys want to just hang out, if you can. If not, that's fine too. And we'll go ahead and jump into these. We have taken, just for clarification, the gentleman that was dismissed earlier and was banned from this meeting is banned from this one meeting, not all future meetings, although it's becoming a tradition of disruption. And with that, we're going to go ahead, and we do have 3, 4, 5, and 6 together. So if you filled out a card for either 3, 4, 5, or 6, or a combination of those, or all of those, you'll be speaking on those items at one time. And we're going to bring 4 people up at a time. Catherine Wagoner, Jamie, I believe it's Garcia. I'm trying to read writing, so I apologize. Marina Saba. And Hamid. On. So if you 4 want to come on up. You will have a minute each on all the items since we took them all together.
A minute each?
So it'll just be 4 minutes?
So you have 1 minute each on all the items, 3, 4, 5, and 6 combined. So 1 minute on all the items. We took them all together at one time
So it'll be
as
4
one
minutes.
hearing. It'll be 1 minute total for each of you.
So we get 1 minute to speak on 4 items?
I'll tell you what, if you want to start on your end, and then you'll figure it out by the time we get to you, you have 1 minute on all 4 items combined.
You don't have to be an asshole about it.
All right.
Wow.
If we can please keep it down in the room, please. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Excuse me, sir. You can,
Relax, Englander.
please.
Yeah, it's
I'm sorry, ma'am. If you want to disrupt this meeting, then we'll ask you to leave as well.
disruptive.
Okay, please. Thank you.
My name's Catherine Wagner. I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Southern California. We and several other civil rights and community organizations submitted our objections to LAPD's body camera proposal in a letter in April, but in brief. LAPD's program, while perhaps the biggest, and regardless of potential monetary benefits, is not even close to being the best. To the contrary, it is quickly becoming an outlier among California agencies for its failures in terms of the lack of public access to video, officers under investigation being not only allowed but required to review footage, and other deep and serious flaws that will prevent the cameras from furthering real transparency, accountability, or public trust. The city is now poised to spend tens of millions of taxpayer dollars on a program that very few outside of law enforcement actually want or
Right.
believe will be effective. The vast public support is premised on widespread belief that people will get to see the videos, and having the cameras creates expectations that the program will not meet and is already failing. It is simply not worth the money, and any funding should be conditioned on substantial revisions in policies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ditto. My name is Mariela. I want to offer an amendment to this committee. You should not be called the Public Safety Committee. You should be called the Police Safety Committee. Very clearly, all your agenda items, all your narrative, your rhetoric, your internal oppression, your external oppression shows that you are pro-police, you're former police, you are just for the police. And these body video cameras, worn cameras on folks is just another way to protect police. So it's a shame that this is under some sort of supposed public safety committee. I'm speaking on behalf of so many Angelinos who oppose body-worn cameras as just another tool, another toy for a whole bunch of boys who are already armed in the streets, already harmful. Any interaction with police is already a violent interaction because you show up to our communities armed and violent. So adding just another tool is completely wrong. We completely oppose it, and 1 minute is not fair.
Jamie Garcia with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So as Avivu says, body cameras are for cops and by cops. This program is fundamentally flawed by design because it's about protecting the department and the city from liability. This is not about exposing the violence of policing nor accountability. So there's no basic trust in LAPD. In 2014, we found that 90 out of 300 digital in-car video systems were sabotaged by police, and nobody investigated this, nobody held anybody accountable, so we don't expect anything different from body cameras. Matt Johnson talks about adjudicating complaints, but we have seen in the most recent reports on racial profiling and biased policing that over 200 complaints, 0 were sustained. This is not about the community. And this should not be about the reduction of complaints. How can we even talk about complaints when we realize that LAPD is the most murderous police force in the nation with 21 in 2015, and now we're already up to 9. I kind of lost count, but I think it's actually 10. So what we want as far as accountability is we want a halt to all surveillance programs, including implementing implementation of body cameras. When we want basically a hearing
Thank you so
on
much.
on the digital
Thank you.
in-car video
Thank you,
system,
sir.
because you didn't
Ma'am, you're
even
now
take the
disrupting this
time
meeting.
to wonder
Okay,
who did this at all.
your time
You know,
is
you
up.
can kick me out, Englander, but be heard by the
Thank you.
community.
Thank you.
Be heard by the community.
We've got
You
to
need to
treat everybody
spend some
equally.
time
Okay,
investigating
ma'am,
these
we're gonna
officers.
ask you to leave. Now you're
Because you
way
don't
over
really
your
care
time.
about what they do.
Now you're disrupting
And you
the
know what?
Sergeant,
You're rude.
please show her out.
Yeah,
Thank
go
you very
ahead.
much.
Send your
Shame on
rules out.
you.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate
Don't
it.
bullshit.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, shame on you.
this
Thank you.
is-
You're both done too. Thank you very much.
This is your Public
Thank
Safety
you very much.
Committee, where you're
Thanks
going
for
to give us a minute to speak about on 4 items where people are dying out there. Buscaino never spoke about it. He spoke about it being in the South Bureau when the
Excuse me.
digital in-car video
Thank you
camera
very much.
was
Time is up.
launched.
Thank you.
But he never spoke about that 92 out of the 300 patrol cars, him and his cops sabotaged and broke that antenna. That was also a violation of the consent decree as well. He never speaks about that 21 people were murdered by LAPD, the most by any department in the country. He never speaks about that out of the
You're-
48.
you're not on the
that-
subject matter.
I'm speaking about
Please.
body
This
cameras
is subject.
because this has not been investigated. We submitted a whole report. I'm with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, 45-page report with community comments, thousands of people rejecting this thing because they don't trust the department. There's mission creep going on. You don't want to want us to show any exhibits. We brought this whole architecture of surveillance, where electronic surveillance going on, human surveillance going on. People are being targeted. People are being murdered. If this is what you're going to be doing, rubber stamping over here, then this is just a facade. This is completely a facade. How dare you just silence us? How you tell us that we can't
Thank you very
speak
much,
because
sir.
you have
Thank you.
4 items and you're
Thank you,
giving
sir.
us
Excuse me,
15
sir, your
seconds
time
per
is up.
item?
Thank you very much.
Is that what you're going to do?
Thank you, sir.
No wonder
Thank
you
you.
lost your ass in the
Thank you
election.
very much. Thank you very much. Sir, now you're disrupting the meeting, so.
You are so
Hey,
disruptive
okay.
and you're not
You're
well.
both disrupting the meeting. We're going to both ask you to leave.
Shame
Thank
on
you.
all of you.
Please leave the meeting. Now you're disrupting the meeting. So we're going to ask you to go ahead and step out. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take, sir, we're going to ask you to step out. Ma'am, sir, you're continuing to disrupt the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. All right, sergeants, if you could please show her out. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for being here. Thank you, sir. We asked you to leave as well. Thank you very much. Because you won't stop disrupting the meeting. You kept going on, and I asked you to leave because of that. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. You're continuing to disrupt this meeting. Thank you very much. We're gonna stop the meeting until you stop disrupting this meeting. All right. Thank you. You're banned for the rest of this meeting. Thank you.
Because we'll keep on speaking. We'll keep on showing.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, please have a seat. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you, sir. You're disrupting the meeting as well, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your opinion.
That's the definition of democracy.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. You're continuing. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Have a good day.
Thanks for sharing. Have a good day. Thank you very much. Be safe. Thank you. All right. Does anybody else want to wish to yell out from the audience and disrupt the meeting, or do they want to? Should we go on and go off on the speaker cards? And okay, then we'll go ahead and do that. All right, next speaker cards, and again, we had some cards come in way after we started the discussion, as we all know. If you filled out a card after we started the presentation, then we'll submit those that you filled out the card as a matter of record. You just won't speak on the item, but most of them were all in, quite frankly, before we started the discussion, and I appreciate all of that. And for those of you that turned the cards in after far beyond beginning the item, we'll go ahead and note that you did that as well. The next one is it Ki Utsui? Okay. Yep. He kicked himself out, ma'am. Junior Sutanen, followed by Lenora.
Thank you.
Govia? Lorena. I apologize. And we'll take you all. And is there a general somewhere as well? Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for your patience.
Sure.
All right, if you're ready, please.
Hi, my name's Gino, and thank you guys for taking my time. I just wanted to talk on behalf of actually being a developer and engineer from a manufacturer based in Los Angeles, California for a body-worn camera. And I know there's a lot of features and a lot of, things that actually match your policy or that a lot of body cameras have. But I actually wanted to put the idea out to you guys that we can actually develop a body camera for the LAPD that's based off of your policy and what you said before from here. And because I want you guys to always be aware of cloud and cybersecurity, of having, it's not, with cloud, it's not your own evidence. You don't know where it's at. And on-premise is actually in your location. It's less likely to get hacked. And you can lose all your evidence, and it could become a much more bigger situation than that you would see before. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what company are you with?
With Wolfcom?
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
Sorry, a minute. I'm going to talk fast. So my name's Lorena. I'm also with Wolfcom. We're a manufacturer of body-worn cameras based in Hollywood. I'm here just to talk about us possibly, because of the cost of what TASER is trying to get approved for LAPD, 31 or 57 million, the staffing, the numbers dropped drastically from when it first started. We wanted to also just bring as an option for that cost, and actually even less than that, a facility, first of all, making custom cameras for LAPD officers, a facility that would be able to support, train, and do all repairs, warranty on these body cameras here just for LAPD. We also wanted to show that we could be creating jobs. We're right here in Hollywood, California. We've been in this industry before Ferguson, before body cameras blew up. We've been doing this for 5 years. We offer a full management solution with body cameras, a hybrid, cloud, and also on-premise. Triggers and everything that came up, we also offer that.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Good morning. My name is General Dogon. I'm a civil rights organizer on Skid Row with LA Can. For about the last 10 years, one of my role jobs has been a point man on our community watch team to go out and document interactions between Skid Row residents and LAPD officers, particularly working out of the Safer Cities Initiative since 2006. Been involved in many lawsuits from Jones to Fitzgerald to Levan, involved in a lot of current TROs, property stuff that happened on Skid Row right now. When I first heard of LAPD getting body cameras, I thought it was a great idea. But when I seen them out on the block on Community Watch, when they have the option to where they can turn the off and on button, then it's a bad idea. I didn't have the video footage, but moving forward, I will bring video footage with Sergeant Garcia, Lieutenant Mathis, both controlling their body cameras at their favoritism, doing what they want to do with the cameras. So just like LAPD, like the folks are saying, they're going to corrupt, like they corrupted the antennas on their cars, they're going to find a way, and they find a way to do the cameras, the body cameras as well. It's all
Great,
about
thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
dealing with these
Thank you.
businesses, and we'll see you in federal court.
Okay, thank you very much. And then our final speaker, Adina Tesler.
Good morning, members of the Public Safety Committee, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. There is no question that there is great value in moving forward with body-worn cameras for the police department. There are three big issues here: product, policy, and process. And it seems to me, as far as product goes, there are over 40 companies in this market now. It's a competitive, rapidly changing market, and cameras are only one piece of the issue. The policy regulating the use, retention of the data, privacy issues, accessibility to the public, use by the criminal justice system, and other big issues in the cost of the data storage, who owns it, whether it is secure. Those are the big issues that the city doesn't seem to be dealing with. In addition, the process, we're talking about transparency here today. There was little transparency in the process, although there was procurement was legal according to the charter. Nobody should be doing this in a city this size without an open bid process. LAPD should be blazing the trail for the rest of the nation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we have no other speaker cards. Did you wish to add something? We haven't noted that. It came in late. And we have other ones from you on time, so we'll call you up on those as well.
Just note, Mr. Chairman, Tyler Munhall with the CEO, the city clerk is distributing a revision to the controller instructions to the committee.
Okay, great. Yes, we got those. Okay. All right, with that, seeing no other questions, no other cards, I have several recommendations here as well. Number one, we'd like to approve the CAO's updated recommendations for implementing the body-worn video camera program and authorize the Chief of Police to negotiate and execute a 5-year contract with TASER. Number two, to approve the CAO's recommendations to accept the grant, Council File 150479S2. Number three, we'll note and file motion 141738. Number four, we'll note and file motion report 141738S1. Number five, we'll direct the LAPD to report back with quarterly updates on the program's implementation, as well as provide regular cost-benefit analysis updates to both this committee and to the Budget and Finance Committee. Number six, we'll direct the Los Angeles Police Department to report to the Public Safety and Budget and Finance Committee the staffing plan for the body-worn video camera program as well. And with that, seeing no other recommendations, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Without objection. And yes.
Mr. Chair, for clarification on for item number 3,
Correct.
will we be accepting the revisions to the control instructions that the CAO
Yes.
submitted?
Yes. I'm sorry, thought I covered that. Yes. We'll do that as well. Okay, so that is approved unanimously. It'll be on council tomorrow, I believe. Okay, tomorrow. Great. Thank you all. We have a number of other items as well that I'd like to call the balance on consent, with the exception of item 8 we had one card for, as well as item 12 we had amendments that were circulated.
Move the balance for approval.
Okay, and on 13 we have, were the amendments brought in on the item 13 for the valet parking ordinance? I think Ben Jones had.
I believe Detective Jones was going to tell the committee what the
Oh, Jones, Detective, did you want to come in and speak on, did you want to speak on 13?
Just for a second, sir.
Okay, come on up on 13. Yes, sir.
On page 2, section D, we've asked the city attorney to make 2 technical amendments. One in sub I to include an exception for legal parking spaces, and sub 3I to include an exception for legal parking spaces, and then section 2 of the report to amend it for an electronic claim receipt.
Okay. Okay, great.
Good morning, Gabrielle Bora with the City Attorney's Office. We've reviewed those suggested changes, and we will be transmitting a revised ordinance.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, with those changes and those amendments, we'll go ahead and accept those and bring the balance of everything on consent except number 8. We had one card from Antonia Ramirez. That card was submitted on time, so we'll call her. She's no longer here. Okay. And seeing no other questions, the balance of and number 15 is also to approve the commission report and requesting the city attorney to draft that ordinance for 15.
Move approval.
With that,
and we do have amendment to item number 12 submitted by the Board of Public Police Commissioners.
Right.
Asked to have a change. Would you like me to read that into the record?
No, we've already accepted the change. So unless you feel, if you want to, we could read it in the record if we have to. So that's fine. Sure. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So what we'd like to do is remove the recommended actions 3F and replace it in its entirety with the following. To authorize the city clerk to place on the city council agenda for July 1st, 2016 or soon thereafter, as possible, the following recommendations for adoption. To transfer $913,222.75 in Fund Number 339, Department Number 70, 2015-16 AB 109 funds, appropriations account number to be determined, to Fund Number 100, Department Number 70, account 001092, overtime sworn, for the use of Los Angeles Police Department for post-release supervised persons programs and activities for the period July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll approve as amended. And so the balance of all of those items are approved unanimously, okay, without objection. And then now we have, that concludes the agenda. We have general public comment. Wayne Spindler, I don't see him, no longer here. So, and Antonia Ramirez, I believe she's still out of the room and left. So that concludes general public comment. We are adjourned.